welcome to Open Exchange here on CNBC Africa. Well, big news yesterday. Jill Marcus, the new Reserve Bank governor, kept rates unchanged at 7%.
Though it wasn't totally unexpected, because I think 24 of 28 economists had expected to keep the repo rate at 7%. She did chat a bit about the rand and said it wasn't the Reserve Bank's role to try and meddle with the rand. And of course, we have seen the rand weakening slightly this morning, trading around 7.44 against the dollar at this stage.
Exactly, and we also heard interesting comments about inflation. Eskom still being very much a concern. A lot of uncertainty over whether we will be getting that 45% tariff increase for the next 3 years. Now, Stephen, you mentioned the rand coming under slight pressure. The dollar is also on the front foot. We had a lot of comments out of President Barack Obama about strong dollar policy, and also Ben Bernanke reiterating that. ECB President Jean-Claude Trichet also said he'd like to see a stronger dollar.
Gold, in the meantime, has hit a new high of $1,144 an ounce, retraced slightly since then, but I think you were saying a little bit earlier that out of 8 of the last trading sessions, gold has managed to hit new highs.
Exactly that, and what we also saw coming out of the US yesterday, industrial production really disappointing the markets, only increasing by 0.1%. There was an expectation it would come up by 0.4%, so a little bit of risk aversion coming to the fore today.
Well, despite that, the Dow Jones hitting a new 13-month high, up by 0.3% yesterday, while the JSE closed at a 14-month high, gaining 0.5% yesterday.
Today on the local front, retail sales set to be released. Previous reading of a contraction of 7%. A very good morning. I'm Eleni Giokos. Risk aversion on the rise globally as we see stock markets taking a knock as worries emerge about Dubai's debt. There's even talk that Dubai could default on $59 billion worth of debt, keeping in mind that Dubai's total debt is currently at $80 billion. We've got Japan's Nikkei at 9,211 points, a loss of almost 2%. We're seeing the yen at a 14-year high against the dollar, this impacting the exporters quite significantly. And of course, we've got to keep in mind that the banking sector as a whole globally has been hard hit by these concerns emerging from Dubai. Hang Seng down 2.9%. The Kospi and Seoul a loss of 2.7% at 1,556 points. We're seeing the construction sector taking a big knock today, as well as the banking sector. ASX 200 in Australia down 2.5% at 4,590 points. Again, it is all about this eruption of worries coming through from Dubai's debt levels, and of course Australian banks have little exposure to Dubai's debt, and this creating quite a lot of pressure for this bourse. We're also seeing the resource stocks taking a breather today as well. Taking a look at how the Western markets performed yesterday, we've got to keep in mind that, of course, the US markets were closed for Thanksgiving yesterday, but the previous session, Dow Jones gained 0.3% and the Nasdaq Composite was up 0.3% as well. And, of course, today it's going to be half a trading day for the US. Today is what they call Black Friday. It is all about the retailers, so it'll be interesting to see what the consumer does. But stocks in the US, of course, are bracing themselves for a sell-off in tandem with what we've been seeing happening on the global front. FTSE 100 down 3.2% at 5,194 points. The DAX in Germany down 3.25%. So clearly a large sell-off in Europe. Again, it is about Dubai's debt worries, and you've got to keep in mind that the banking sector took the biggest knock in Europe as well yesterday. Well, joining me now for more on the markets is Viv Govender from Cortex Derivatives. Viv, thank you very much for your time today.
Good morning.
Let's look at this issue with Dubai's debt levels. There's even talk that Dubai could default on $59 billion worth of debt. And it's quite interesting to see that these worries have emerged now and didn't really happen when things were really bad last year, October. Are you concerned that this is going to have a far greater effect on the global economy?
Not so much the effect on the global economy, just as a sign of things that may still be to come.
Looking at the economic data that we've been seeing coming out of the US, because some of it has been really good, some of it a little bit disappointing, but we've also got to keep in mind it's mostly been due to all the stimulus that's been coming out of the US. There's also concerns about the artificial stimulus in China, and there's been talk about industrial overcapacity. Is that also creating a concern from the economic perspective?
Oh yes, I mean,
Clive, as you said, 200 tons bought by India. China has been buying about 600 tons. And what is interesting to note is they're willing to pay a premium for gold. If you look at the longer term trend in terms of central banks globally, we know that they keep buying at the top and selling at the bottom. Why buy at a premium right now? Well, it's quite interesting. It's not only South Africa. It's obviously quite a global problem. My concern is our reliance on coal. We need to find more of a sustainable way in producing electricity. And I was really excited when we heard about the pebble bed reactor because it won't only use uranium but also something called thorium, which South Africa has in abundance, and we actually haven't started mining. We haven't started mining thorium as yet, but obviously pebble bed reactors come at a very expensive cost. What do you make of sustainable energy? Do you think it's something South Africa should be looking for going forward? Headline earnings per share up 15%. But before we get into the numbers, we've also heard news that BJM is currently in talks. You've also announced a cautionary. You're talking about growth at this stage. Are you talking about acquisitive growth, or are you going to be acquired?
It could be either.
Well, Nandi, now that you've got proof that there is collusion in the cement industry, does this perhaps strengthen the case for collusion in the construction industry? Because we know the construction companies are also under the spotlight. Before we get into the numbers, we were talking about the Competition Commission, and we had Nandi Mokoena on from the Competition Commission and talking about the retailers and the fact that they are being investigated right now, and of course SPAR being one of them. What has your relationship been with the Competition Commission? Meanwhile, Marion Roberts issued a statement this morning saying that the only contract to which it was exposed with Nakheel Property Group was the Trump Tower. It said the contract was terminated and all accounts settled in full within the previous financial year. Marion Roberts said it continues to progress final account settlement of Dubai International Airport. Progress remains slow, but the joint venture is confident of the rights under the contract and will pursue these rights accordingly. South African coal miner Sentula said first-half headline earnings slumped by 78% as export earnings declined because of the global economic crisis. Sales fell 32% to 1.19 billion rand as both ferrochrome and coal markets came under pressure. CEO Robin Berry said the company is positioned to profit from any upturn in the global condition.